third attempt on the life of President Donald Trump and members of his cabinet. And accused in that is this guy right here seen in these courtroom sketches, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen. He is the suspected gunman from Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He appeared in court for the first time. Prosecutors charged Allen with 2 firearms counts and 1 count of attempting to assassinate the President of the United States. For his part, no plea entered by Mr. Allen. His next court appearance is Thursday. We'll be there. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman joins us now. Katrina, walk us through Allen's first court appearance and what these charges mean for him.
Reed, this was a brief preliminary court appearance. He appeared in that bright blue jumpsuit you saw in the photo. Allen confirmed his identity, his age, and that he has a master's degree in computer science. Prosecutors told the judge that they want to preventatively detain him. They've now charged him, but we are still waiting for a grand jury indictment, so we don't yet have a plea from him. But of course, the most serious charge that he is facing is this attempt to assassinate the president charge. And key elements of that, Reed, are going to be for the prosecution to show intent, planning, premeditation. In this alleged manifesto that's come out that CBS News obtained quite early, we do see elements of that. So it seems like this could be a very solid case against Cole Allen. But as you said, the next hearing will be Thursday and things will progress from here. It will be very interesting also to see what he ultimately decides to plea here.
It will be, and we know you'll be on top of that. But there's also another interesting angle I've got to ask you about specific to the location of Saturday's shooting. It's reminiscent of another attempted assassination, that very same venue. You've been digging into that history. Maybe remind our viewers what you found.
That's right. So there is this fascinating parallel that in 1981, there was an assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan's life at that same hotel. Things were handled a little bit differently back then. The Washington Hilton has always been a place that was designed for presidents. They have this secret passageway, Reed. There is a holding room. There's a special way that they can go basically from where they enter the hotel into the ballroom. But back in Reagan's day, they actually had to walk outside to get into the car. So as Reagan was walking to his limousine after giving a speech at the hotel, he was shot by John Hinckley Jr., who fired a number of shots from just 15 feet away. And there are just, it was a very pivotal moment for presidential security as well as for the hotel, Reed. So after that, they built this secure garage bunker. When President Trump arrived, that's what he went into. So no one ever sees him from the outside. There's a way for him to enter and exit completely securely. But I spoke with Del Wilbur, who wrote this seminal book about the near assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. And he also said, after this, that is when they began to use magnetometers at the president's events, as well as at the presidents at the White House. So there was a lot of change in how they handled security after this. They increased staffing. After what happened on Saturday night, Reed, I think we're also going to see a real reassessment of how the Secret Service handled this. Obviously, they were able to ultimately protect the president, but there's a lot of conversation, a lot of concerns about whether there should have been stronger security at that hotel.
Well, the threat level is greater these days with threats and actions of political violence. The environment is different, and so the changes we would assume are still to come as the world evolves. Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much. So, Senior Fellow for Counterterrorism and Homeland Security in Georgetown, Professor Bruce Hoffman joins us from Washington, D.C. Professor Hoffman, our apologies for your students for pulling you away from any instruction you had planned this morning, but we're grateful to have you with us. We're living in a time, as I just mentioned, of this heightened political feeling in our country that's now translated into violence. Indeed, the attempts on the president's life. How do you make sense of the rising extremism in our country? And I think the greater question is, how do we recognize it and do something about it as a people?
I think the rise in political extremism is cut of several different cloths. I mean, firstly, the deep divisions and polarization politically in this country is one source of it. Secondly, the algorithms and social media that encourage and accentuate extremist sentiments rather than damp them down. In other words, that introduce people into an echo chamber, a supportive echo chamber. Thirdly, just the fact of the matter is the availability of firearms in the United States to carry out such attacks. And then the fourth one would be when there's this unfortunate convergence with mental illness.
As we see this video of what played out there in Washington at the Hilton and so many people ducking under tables, I'm mindful of the fact that you've studied this dynamic before and in fact have published it. You have a book titled Terrorism. It talks about the changing face of terrorism. What more can you say about the text of that book and how it applies to what happened over the weekend?
Well, the biggest change, and this is you have a previous edition. I've just finished the fourth edition of Inside Terrorism. The biggest change is that the use of force or the use of violence is becoming much more accepted and far more justified in American society than in recent memory. Let me give you an example. Just recently, a poll of persons who identified themselves as Democrats, 40% said that they would favor using force or violence to depose President Trump. I mean, in a democracy, this is unacceptable and almost unheard of. Uniquely, just a few years ago, when the same question was asked of persons who identified themselves as Republicans about then sitting President Joe Biden, an almost identical percent, nearly 40% of persons said that they also support the use of violence against what was then President Biden. So we see extremes in both parties or extremes at both ends of the political spectrum almost coming together and reaching the same conclusion, which can only be unacceptable and intolerable in a democracy where we change elected leadership not through violence, but at the polling place.
And really, you use a powerful term there, justification, and the rise in justifying this kind of political violence. I could talk to you all day, love to sit next to a professor and glean any bit of wisdom I can get, but unfortunately we have to move on in our broadcast. I thank you so much for being with us. We both together hope for a better world, right? Bruce Hoffman, we appreciate it.